95% of the topics I discuss on this channel have, in the bigger picture, been discussed by many other channels. Usually the only way to set ourselves apart is how we talk, crack jokes, our editing, or our perspectives. But this one day, I was alone in my house, and my brain just had zeroed in on this actual jackpot. What makes a good video game character? I felt like an absolute genius. And then I started going on the internet looking for quotes and some interesting perspectives I could get on it. And unfortunately, there was this exact same presentation that had already been delivered on this topic by none other than Pretty Good Gaming. So not only do these guys have to break our hearts by going their own separate ways, which actually now I'm kind of happy they have, but they also had to scoop up interesting topics before others, so underrated talent couldn't have anything that would fly. You know the quote that you see a lot on YouTube comments like, "Hey, can I copy your homework? Oh yeah, sure, just don't make it too obvious." That's basically where we're going with today. So, anyway, on with the video. I've talked a lot about the importance of single-player games on this channel, quite a bit. At one point, there was all this talk about whether or not they were going to be a big part of the industry's future, coming from EA of all people. That's really strange. And creating a compelling character is, I'm sure, quite a challenging process, because humanity is a very judgmental bunch, and behind the scenes, writers, I'm sure, go through many iterations on creating someone that everyone can understand and engage with throughout this entire story. And in the past, that hard work has often paid off. Memorable protagonists like Ezio, Nathan Drake, Arthur Morgan, Lee Everett, just to name a few, have all played vital roles in creating emotional bonds with the players, all while simultaneously the plot of the stories are being fleshed out. Now, the first reason I want to talk about why these characters are so well remembered was something that Mike and Gary touched upon, and that's that they're all very morally conflicted. So you've got Arthur Morgan, who's an outlaw with family ambition for the people he cares about, but in doing so he also robs and kills some undeserving in the process. Nathan Drake, while he's got a very lovable personality, he also has this very unhealthy obsession for treasure hunting and often puts his loved ones in danger. Lee Everett puts protecting this young girl in a zombie apocalypse at his first priority, but he's also a convicted murderer and is well known by the other local characters you'll meet. Players can get so much more hooked on characters that are like us in a way, because they don't feel in any way out of touch with the real world. And while yes, the world that they are living in is more of a fictional or alternative, but it's the human factors of their character arcs that make them so much easier to connect with on an emotional level. Another key factor you could use is sympathy, which is something a lot of YouTubers like to go fishing for nowadays. This kind of ties into my first point, where you can make players balance back and forth between different emotions when the game reveals some new insight on the character's past or even present. Like, a natural dilemma we have as human beings is to make a very subconscious impression on characters when we think we've had a good taste of what their personality is like. And when it comes to that kind of situation, what I'm personally anticipating later on in the story is a redeemable factor to the character that explains why he or she is the way they are. It makes the journey for the player that much more interesting, because now we are having these conflicted feelings towards someone who we thought we understood. That can lead to a stronger connection if it's done right. It says a lot about memorable characters that fall into that category. Their development must have been executed so well to perfection that players were willing to overlook the flaws and still wish them to succeed in attaining their goals. It's not just like a little relationship that grows just because of the hours we spend with them. There is a lot to dissect from the inside. God, I'm starting to sound like an absolute beta. The next factor is the writing that goes into all other parts of the project. So the universe, the plot, the dialogue, the performances from the actors need to be convincing. Basically just one big team effort. Players can be easily pulled out of an experience if there is some inconsistency among those factors. So you look at what I think were underwhelming campaigns like Black Ops 3, Destiny Year 1, The Order 1886. These stories failed because they tried to raise tension without briefing enough information to the player that justifies the situation. Whether it's a villain with ass-backwards motivation, or some really unique features that don't get an explanation of their existence, or just a really unrelatable, unlikable, boring protagonist. You aren't going to create a memorable story if players feel like there is this disconnection between them and what they're having to endure in the game. Sure, I can still have fun with the gameplay and such, blasting through these missions, but when a bad piece of writing shows itself, it's very obvious and it sticks out like a hand with no fingers.
Not long after.
You've done a lot of damage to this alliance.
Yes, we have, ma'am. And there's no excuse for it.
Welcome to the New Republic.
Thank you, ma'am.
Logic.
To sound this off, I think making a good video game character is something that everyone has experienced in either, video games or movies and TV shows for that matter. And we all know what made them compelling and why we had such a good time with them. But I found it interesting that when you actually look at other well-celebrated characters, you notice there's certain similarities as well as some unique features. It goes without saying that of course we want the story itself to be well written, we want some actors who put on some convincing performances, and we want to play as a badass. But my own personal favourite characters are morally a lot like myself. They made mistakes in life, they experienced failure, so to have a piece of myself reflected in the character that I play gives me a much bigger understanding and appreciation for them as individuals. So there you have it, there's my little tutorial. So if you're a writer who has just been told to write a new story for an upcoming game and you just happen to find this video, you follow these simple elements, then judging by how long games take these days to make, we'll go 2025. 2025 for single player games is gonna be fire. Until then, we just do what gamers are taught to do most of the time, and that's wait. And wait some more. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. You take care.
But I won't hear you in my safe space. My safe space.
Bulletproof windows. If you do not like